Hello everyone, and welcome to another replay analysis video, brought to you by me, ViBE. And today, I actually had a request to go over one of my own games, rather than watch somebody else's. So this is going to be a top level GM, Zerg versus Protoss. I believe when this game was played, my account, LBB, which is ViBE LOL backwards, mind blown. My account during this game was like 5750 MMR, about 5750, I think. Something around there. And this guy is about 5800 when I played him. So it's, both of us are like rank 50-ish, 40 to 50 GM. In this game, I'm going for a standard, like kind of a, not really standard I would say, but it's more of a macro opener. It's going to most likely be gasless. 100% it's going to be gasless. I don't really play gas in ZvP that much, but when going for gasless, okay, there's some things you got to think about, things that are important. All right, number one is always, I would just say, take a pool before your third hatch, like this. So my build so far has been 17, or sorry, that was actually a 16, I think, and then a 17 pool. And we're going to go for a 19 hatch. So as soon as we start the 19th drone, we send a drone out. That's ideally what I want to be doing. But I'm not doing it yet. This drone's probably going to get to my third after I already have 300 minerals. If you actually send your drone out the second you start a 19th drone, and then you send a drone out, you will get 300 minerals the second the drone reaches here. See, I'm going to be a tad bit late. Like, I'm about to have 300 minerals and I'm just a little bit off. I only sent it like 2 seconds late, but still. Like, I could have had it down a couple seconds earlier. It doesn't really matter. I still sent it early enough. But now that we have, you know, our main, our natural, and our third down, which is 16, 17, 19 supply on all those buildings, we now are scouting our opponent. I'm going to pause it really quick just to tell you guys something. So, against Protoss, the one thing you should really be worried about all the time doing a build like this, one thing that's kind of like a problem for you going gasless, is if you don't realize you're being proxied by something. Because if you are being proxied by something, you need to react to it by taking a gas really early. Because things like Ravagers are amazing. They do really well against all types of proxy, like proxy cannons into, you know, like a proxy pressure with like Immortal Stalker, stuff like that. Ravagers are great. Or people who just go for like a cannon rush into like a defensive macro build. That's also great for Ravagers because you can always counterattack as well, if it's that kind of a situation. So you always want to know if the probe is like building stuff at your natural. And when the probe passed my Overlord, I think my Overlord was like right here. It was a bit back. But then the probe kind of committed to my main and it kept running around my main the whole time. So I saw it the entire time and I knew I wasn't being proxied. So instead of leaving my Overlord here, I just moved my Overlord up a tad to see, you know, if anything else was happening. But if the probe ever disappeared, okay? If the probe ever just like went into fog and then just disappeared, and let's say my natural was like 30% or 40% of the way down, and my Overlord started up, moving up here, and it was like currently here. If the probe ever goes back in the fog, I will send the Overlord back to go scout and see if it starts building pylons. It's important. You really want to know that. If you don't want to move your Overlord around, it's totally fine just to leave your Overlord right here and call it a day. You could totally do that. No, it's important. But now that we know we're not being proxied or anything like that, we're droning our asses off, and we're scouting his base with my Overlord. You always want to kind of like dive in too further. You don't want to just stop here and be like, oh, that's it, that's all we needed to see. It's a lot of info, but you still want to see more, because right now his cybernetic score is done. And if we're looking at something to pay attention to, okay, his cybernetic score is done, and he's making a unit out of a gateway with a chrono boost. We don't know what it is as Zerg, okay? We don't know what it is, but we do know he's making something out of it. And he's also not saving chronos for nexuses. Like when the natural finishes, he's not just going to spam chrono probes, because he's chronoing a gateway unit. And we also see the shield or the cybernetic score spinning really quick. It has like a graphics animation. You can see it. It does not spin like that if it is not upgrading something, and you can almost 99% assume it's going to be warp gate. Very unlikely that it's like a rushed +1 weapons for air this fast or something like that. It's most likely warp gate. So this looks standard. And this also tells me that this guy probably didn't do something like the second the core finished, he rushed a like Twilight Council because he wanted to go for the fastest DTs possible. Something like that. Paying attention to shit like that is important because at the very least, this is 50 gas. Could be up to 75 to 100, 250. Because you have, as if this was a Zealot, it would be no gas. If it was an Adept, it's 25 gas. If it was a Stalker, it's 50 gas. And if it was a Sentry, it's 100 gas. And all of these units are available. Like the Zealot's available no matter what. But the other 3 units that cost gas become available as soon as the core is done. So all of these things could be a possibility. And the bigger gas unit he makes, the more likely his tech is delayed. And if it's a Stalker or if it's a Sentry, most likely that unit will turn around and come attack the Overlord. And if he's chrono boosting it, that gives me a clock in my brain that's like, okay, well, I have about like 10 seconds now after passing this gateway to where if a unit 10 seconds from now is not hitting my Overlord, then it's most likely an Adept that was made. And 10 seconds from now, if my Overlord is not getting hit, I'm going to make Zerglings. Because I'm going to then make Zerglings to then catch the Adept as it comes to my base. But we're still going to scout in his base meanwhile. And if I see something that's tech back here, it tells me almost guaranteed that it's also an Adept. Or a Zealot. And we just now saw a Stargate. So if you look at production tab, we scouted a Stargate. And I'm still not being attacked by a unit yet. I can almost... It's very high probability. It's not guaranteed, because there are some people who play weird. But it's a very high probability that it's an Adept. Because he scouted I was gasless, so he doesn't really need to just get a really quick wall off here and be like, oh god, I'm going to get attacked by his speedlings. Like, it's not happening. He knows it's not happening because he scouted it. He saw I don't have gas early. And then he rushes the Stargate pretty early, so this means his gas was not being consumed by the gateway really much at all. So it's probably an Adept attacking me. So I make Zerglings. I will make Zerglings now as a reaction. I should be making them like right now. There you go. Starting some Zerglings. There's the Adept. So we lost one drone. Kind of unfortunate, but oh well. Now with the Overlord, I went back to his gateway one more time just to see if he's still building units, and he is. So because of this, I'm going to then build a little bit more Lings. Because if I make, like, let's say 6 Lings, okay? Which is actually what I have right now. I have 6 Lings in total. If I make 6 Lings, that's plenty of Lings to kill 1 Adept without speed. But every time he makes an additional Adept, and like the old Adept is still alive, you want to make somewhere between 4 and 6 additional Lings for every future Adept that he makes that you still have not killed yet. So if he shows up with 2 Adepts this next time, and I still only have 6 Lings, it's very unlikely my 6 Lings are going to stop it, because he could actually just walk at my units and attack and move and attack and move and kill all of my Lings and get out. And then start killing drones again, and it's going to be annoying, and I'll have to just remake some more Lings. Or surround with my drones, which is never really what you want to do. But if I have, like, let's say 10 to 12 Lings, and he shows up with 2 Adepts, guaranteed, I can zone him out, and I can, if I actually get a good surround. Because on creep, a Zergling does walk slightly faster than an Adept, even without Zergling speed. If I get a good surround, I just get rid of the Adepts straight up, and it's like easy peasy for me. So I should make more Lings now, as a reaction to seeing another gateway unit. And then we're going to head back to the Stargate, and we're going to see what he makes out of the Stargate first. Meanwhile, we're still just spamming drones out. Seeing this Stargate is huge, because it tells you how early you need spores. If he makes an Oracle first, you need to make spores a little bit faster. If he makes a Phoenix first, you can delay spores until the Oracle is then being made. Like right now, he's now making an Oracle, and we're now making spores. This Phoenix is already done, and we still don't have spores done yet. But the Oracle is being produced now, and there's no telling. He might chrono boost it. I don't know how much energy this Nexus over here has. He could totally chrono boost it if he wanted to. So just to avoid, and also I'm being distracted a little bit by these Adepts. So just to be safe about it, as soon as you see an Oracle being built, you just be like, alright, fuck it. It's time to make spores. At least 1 spore per base is like easy peasy ideal. And if you didn't know this, you can tell what unit a Protoss is making out of a Stargate, because you can see an outline of the unit right here in this green box. inside the Stargate, you can see the unit. Just pay attention to like what it looks like inside of it. You can see the outline of an oracle right there. You can tell by it's got like the little 2 front frames and shit. And it's got a circular body. The Phoenix is easier to tell because it has these like big fat wings on the front. And then a Void Ray looks kind of like an oracle, but like a lot fatter and longer. You know, and then a Tempest and a Carrier are really obvious because they're fucking enormous. But yeah, now that I know it was an oracle coming, I made spores. So there we go, boys. The Lings zoned out the Adepts and killed them. And we're still just droning. Against someone who goes Stargate, I usually like to take my first 2 gases at around 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Because it allows me to, you know, spend around the time of... The reason why 3 minutes 40 seconds, okay, is an important number is because around 3 minutes 40 seconds, if I have not taken any damage from my drone line, this game I've lost 5 drones to the Adepts, so he did a good job with his Adepts. But ideally, if I take no damage to my mineral line, if I defend perfectly, if I take 2 gases at 3 minutes 40 seconds, it actually means that I can take my gas while spending all my larvae the second all my larvae spawn. Like, I will never have a larva just chilling at my hatchery if I take gases at this time, if I took no damage. And then so like adding on gases at 340 means that I still have enough drones to still keep spinning all my larvae, and my economy gets really powerful really fast. It's like there's no hiccups in the economy because of that, and it's still early enough that if this guy were to do something like he opens up with a Stargate and then goes into like a 7-gate charge lot all in or some shit like that, I will still have the gas I need to defend that with, as in roaches, an investment into roaches. I'll still defend it because I take the gas early enough. This is as early as I can take the gas without fucking my economy up. So it's greedy as hell. I remember, this guy plays really well. He harasses really well this game. He kills the Overlord, and then he lifts the Phoenix, or lifts the Queen of my Phoenix so that I can't help my other Queen. It gets out after killing the Queen and the Overlord without losing, you know, either of his units. So it's he harasses pretty well. But now look at the drone count. We're still up, even though we took some damage here and there. We're still ahead in workers. We're not ahead in supply yet because we haven't exploded with our production yet. But we are ahead in workers. We've already got very close to 3 base fully saturated. Now he shows up with a bunch of Adepts. This is roughly around the time when we're making roaches. So here, let me explain what just happened, okay? Because I kind of like zoomed by that. So this is important. I'm actually going to back it up really quick. This is actually huge. This is probably the most important thing about this build. Right now. Notice how I'm scouting his thirds with my Zerglings. This is actually the most important. Seriously, this is... If there's nothing you've listened to so far about my build up to this point, this is it, okay? This is how you tell a lot of things with a really simple technique. Look at the clock. It's 4 minutes and 46 seconds. And think about the game so far. What's happened? He's made a few... He's up to this point, he's made 2 Adepts that have harassed me. And he's now harassing me with an Oracle and 1 Phoenix. Really, nothing out of the ordinary. And he's also even got a second Oracle right there. He's been macroing really standard up to this point, okay? He took a natural early on, and he's now, you know, up to this point. This is what most Protoss's will do if they play a standard game. But now you can tell really hard if they're going to all-in you, or if they're going to pressure you, or if they're going to be really greedy. And it's all about the third timing. If a Protoss takes a third around 450, it means at most they have 2 gates and whatever tech they've gone into. It could be an Archon drop, it could be defensive Immortals, it could be Stargate, like it could be anything really, any tech-wise. But it means they have a very, very low gateway count if they take their third by around 450. If they take their third by around 5 minutes to 5 minutes 10 seconds, it means they could not guaranteed, but a very high chance they have around 4 gateways. They could totally have 4 gates, and these 4 gates could then pressure you if he has like a prism. He could make 4-gate Zealot. He could make 4-gate, like 2 Archons in a prism, and then he could warp in 4 more Zealots as he gets to your base. It's very likely he could have 4 gates. Because that's why the third has been delayed by a little bit longer, 10 to 20 more seconds. Now, if we're at like 5:10, and he still does not have a third started yet, it means he could very likely have 5, 6, 7 gateways. And the longer every second that goes by that he still doesn't take a third, you are more likely. It's like the red flag is going up, like you're getting all in, you're getting all in. That's how you can tell if a Protoss is owning you, just by the third. Which is why it's really important to send out like a Zergling to both his potential thirds, to really get an idea as to what's exactly going on, because this tells me if I can still drone or not. If he already had a third started right now, like a probe is already here and a Nexus is started, I would make a big ass round of drones after. I've already made these earlier, but I would keep making way more drones after this. But if I don't see a third go up really soon, I'm going to stop drone production right now and I'm going to go into roaches. Excuse me. So the link died. That doesn't mean he's taken a third yet. It just means the link died. We just saw more adepts crossing over here. So now we should be making roaches. We should be making roaches right now. And we're re-checking the third with our link. We see multiple gates. See, like that shit? That means his third has been delayed because of that. This third's been going up for now 15 seconds, which means he took the third at 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Or really 5 minutes 14 seconds, exactly. So, like I said before, if he takes the third around like 5 minutes to 5:10, guaranteed he has 4 gates. It's like a guarantee. And we can see at least 3 of them right there. If we hit everyone's vision, he's got... he has 3 gates, and he has a council and a robo behind it. And then a Stargate as well. So he already has like all types of he has all branches of tech already, and he has 3 gates as well, which is why his third is delayed. A little bit. It's not delayed by a lot, it's a little bit. And a lot of times if it's delayed by a little bit, it's going to be a pressure. There's no reason to make extra gates and delay your third if you're not going to do pressure. The only reason why you do it is because you want to attack the Zerg if you're Protoss. So we had roaches in production before he got to my base, so that as he gets to my base, my roaches are spawning, basically. So he just got here with his adepts, and my roaches are now popping out of eggs. So we did this as greedy as possible. And now, since we've, at this point, since we've confirmed, okay, yeah, he has a third base, it's started, we know he's going to macro behind this a little bit, and he's not reinforcing with units, with either a prism or just more like a proxy pylon or something like that. There's no more units attacking me. He's not trying to multi-prong. This was just a poke. So now that I've made enough roaches to guaranteed stop it, I made my first round of roaches to stop his first wave of adepts, and I made a second round of roaches. You can see 8 more coming, just in case he were to do something like cancel a third base and just go for an actual all-in. It's possible that he could do that. So, but I haven't seen a follow-up yet. There's no there should be a follow-up already. This attack has been going on for like a good 15 seconds already, ever since he came on my creep. That sounded nasty. But you know what I mean. He walked onto my creep and he's been there for a while and there's no follow-up. So now is when I should drone again. And I'm starting to drone again. So we take a, since we're starting to drone again, we take a 4th base. And also this kind of confirms that he's going to keep the third. There's no all-in happening right now, so it should be a Nexus done here. And there it is. So he is legit macroing now. You can never be too sure with Protoss. Protoss does some weird shit. Now, while we're droning behind this, we're switching our tech up. We're going into Hydras. We're going into an Infestation Pit. We're going into range weapons. The purpose of this is, I feel like this is kind of like the meta of Protoss, is they will set up the game in some way. It could be any units, really. It could be gateway units. It could be Stargate units. It could be warp prism pressure. It doesn't matter how the Protoss sets it up. It almost always, though, it will turn into Charge Lot, Archon, Immortal, with Templars in the back that'll storm you. Most Zergs know what I'm talking about if you've ever played against Protoss in the last year, because this is like the most common build for Protoss. And I feel like in the current meta, the way that is, if you just take an infestation pit, as soon as your economy is stabilized on 3 base, fully saturated, which ours is, because we're, you know, our gases are about to be fully saturated here, and our main international are already fully saturated. We've got to fix that gas, but we're going to fix our economy in general. It'll happen in a second. But as soon as our economy is good, we then take an infestation pit while we're producing units, like for hydras and shit, and we go for a fast hive. And the reason why we do this is because we go for a quick Broodlord transition. Because if the Protoss stays on Charged Lot Archon Immortal and they never get off of that, if the game does not end with our attacks and trying to break him down a little bit here, that's okay. Because eventually he's going to attack into Broodlords, and then it's going to be really hard for him to break the Broodlord from there. Because Broodlords are insanely good against Charged Lot Archon Immortal. So we're kind of just like testing the waters here. We don't really want to run up the ramp with all of our shit at once. We're not running up the ramp at all. Because we see sentries. We know he has sentries, so we don't want to overcommit here. And we actually just picked them both off, which is great. Because killing a sentry is nice simply for the fact that if you get rid of a sentry early, it's not going to sit there and just build up force field energy for the next 3 minutes before he does a timing. So it helps a lot getting rid of them early. And we're still getting out with most of our roaches. We're not overcommitting and throwing our army away. We're just we just wanted to poke a little bit and see what we could do. A lot of times Protosses will have zealots that'll just charge your roaches and you can just kite them back and kill the zealots and then run away from the Archons and the Immortals. That happens quite a bit as well. But now we're going into, again, we made a little bit of Lings, and we're going into Hydra Roach. Because it seems like he might attack me. I really should be looking at these rocks. He's not attacking me. But I made a little bit of an army, just in case. We're not really in a rush to saturate our 4th base, because we don't really have a lead in this game. It's kind of scary to just make drones at this point. Because, you know, if this guy's already saturated on 3 bases, and then I spend time saturating a 4th base, but then he launches an attack right as I'm done saturating my 4th base, that's like 22 larvae worth of, or actually 24 larvae worth of units that I no longer have, which is the equivalent of 48 supply if we're talking about roaches, or if we're talking about hydras. And if you don't know where I'm getting those numbers from, the reason why I said 24 is because it takes 22 drones to saturate a base fully, and then it takes 2 extra drones to build 2 gases. So it's 24 larvae worth of units, which is a shitload in terms of army supply. So you got to be careful about droning your 4th if you're not really at an advantage at this point. But he backed off, and he set up a 4th, or he denied my scout with the 4th with like 1 unit, which means he's probably going to set up a 4th. We're going to poke out right now, and we actually made a round of drones behind it, after we confirmed he was not breaking my rocks for a timing. And he is doing a bit of multi-prong. He's doing a good job of being a little bit annoying with like whatever this little tiny skirmish attacks. I don't know. It is being a little annoying to deal with. But we're fine. We killed the zealots, we killed the adepts, and our economy is still, you know, well saturated. We've added some spines in now, just in case he does that again. The reason why I put him at my 3rd over here is because this base is the most exposed base out of all of mine. It has the least amount of creep spread around it, so I have the least amount of time to react to it if it gets attacked. And it's also the furthest base away from all the rest of my bases, because the rest of my bases are so tightly close together with creep. I could get to any one of these 3 bases super fast. This base is just exposed though, so adding the spines here is the best idea. And then adding in some spines to my main a little bit later on. A lot of times what I like to do is that if my main starts mining out, against Protoss specifically, instead of always transferring my drones, a lot of times what I'll do is I will build spines out of the excess drones, because it'll start guarding my expensive tech. So if I added, like, let's say 3 more spines into my base, because we're 13 out of 10, I would have 5 spines guarding my Hydra Den, my Infestation Pit, my Greater Spire, my Spawning Pool. A lot of my most important tech is chilling in my main right now, so I want to keep it alive. And spines are a great way to help buy time to keep it alive. Now we're going to start a Greater Spire. And get ready to go into Broodlords. We're actually just going to... Ideally, what I should do... This is something important. If you like to build this playstyle, you should always scout your opponent or have an idea of what they're doing before you really commit to it as well. Because... I can assume that this guy is going to go for Charge Lot Archon Immortal. He showed me he had Archons. Or sorry, he didn't actually show me an Archon yet. But he did show me he had Immortals. He showed me some Adepts and some Zealots. He showed me a couple Sentries earlier. But it really wasn't like a big army. And he also didn't do the timing in the mid-game like I thought he might. He didn't do it. When he was like walking out here and shit, he went back home. So right now what I should do if I want to play intelligently is I should scout him with like a Zergling. Or like a couple Zerglings. And I should see, are you trying to expand even further than you already are? And are you actually committed to going for a lot of Immortals and a lot of Charge Lots, etc, etc, etc? Are you actually doing that comp? Because what if this guy made like 3 Immortals and then he made an Observer and he saw how fast I was going for a Hive? Let's just pretend that there's an Observer sitting right there, okay? And he's like watching my Hive and he's watching the fact that I'm taking a Greater Spire. And then he's like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go Carriers really fast. And he just makes like 4 Stargates off of like really, really low amounts of supply, which is potentially why he didn't attack me. And then now, if I make like 10 Broodlords and attack across the map blindly, he just has like 7 Carriers now, and I'm like, oh shit. Well, that was a bad choice to make Broodlords. So it's not like you should just do it every time blindly. I should really what I should do now, right as I'm getting ready to do it, is go, are they going to be a good idea or not? So I should really scout before I make the Broodlords. It would be intelligent. And there you go. I don't have to scout anymore. He just showed me the army. It doesn't matter anymore. He just walked across the middle of the map where my Zergling is currently disabled by a Stasis Ward. He just showed me like 3 Archons and 5 Immortals and some Templar. So and also the fact that I just got charged over here. And there's some more charge lots over here. This is now Charge Lot Archon Immortal for sure. It's not some weird tech swap that he's hiding. So Broodlords would be great. And now, what we want to do here is we want to play this really patient. We don't want to force a fight if we don't have to. I'm just gonna try and stay defensive on creep, which is gonna give me a little bit of an advantage because I can maneuver in and out of force fields and also in and out of Psionic Storm a little faster. Also, when his zealots move forward to attack me with charge, I can kite them a little bit quicker than I could otherwise off creep. So I don't ever want to take a fight off creep. I want to stay defensively in choke points if I can and make it harder for him to engage. Because all I have to do right now is I have to buy time. Because there's 2 ways to go about going for Broodlords. There's one way you can do it where you get the Broodlords around like 12 minutes. And instead of getting them really early, the reason why you get them later is because you go for like Lurkers or Banelings. But if you go for Lurkers or Banelings, you really should probably max out on supply and launch either an attack on him, or if he attacks you first, set up a huge massive counterattack like on his army, or like a big flank or whatever. You know, I'm not saying counterattack is base. You could if you really wanted to, but you're basically making an army to fight his army. And if he's the one who pulls the trigger first and he moves out before you attack him, then you kill his army. But basically, you just want to kill his army. Okay? If you go for Banelings and or Lurkers with this kind of a composition. But if you play it like I did this game, where I only went Hydra, Ling, Roach, I have 0 AoE in my army. I do not have Banelings, and I do not have Lurkers. There's no tech for it at all. What that means is I'm going to get Broodlords faster because I'm not spending gas on other units. But it does also mean my army is a little bit weaker, which requires you to micro a little bit better. Because if I eat like one big Psionic Storm here and I lose a chunk of Hydra, I'm guaranteed just going to lose the fight. I need to just stall as long as I can for these Broodlords, and if I can manage to do that while also keeping my economy alive, I get this like massive swing of power in my favor, because this whole kind of a composition gets completely shut down as soon as Broodlords come out. Like, Broodlords change the whole game. So I'm going to try and avoid a fight as much as possible, but I'm also going to try and keep my base defended. Now we have 5 corruptors that have just been made, and our Greater Spire is very close to being done. And we're still just trying to manage control here. He's kind of committing to the push. We're trying to micro a bit. Micro is okay. I ate one storm a little bit on the Hydras. But, you know, it only did half its damage, so it's not the end of the world. I still have a pretty large amount of supply and a pretty large army. And now we have Broodlords in production, which are going to be done in the next 14 seconds. And these things, not only do they just kill units really fast after the Protoss, but they also add an AI hiccup in his army, in the sense that every Broodling that gets spawned on the Protoss' army adds another target that his Immortals and his Archons are just going to auto-attack instead of like my Hydras and Roaches. So it adds a lot of meat to my army, basically. We're doing a pretty good job here microing. We're dodging a lot of storms, and we're getting rid of a lot of the Archons before the Broodlords are even in the fight. But now the Broodlords are in the fight. That was a bad storm for me. And now he's kind of committed to killing the hatchery. And whenever a Protoss does something like that, where now he goes, okay, your army is still there, and instead of fighting your army, I'm just going to kill a structure. You can almost assume that the reason why the Protoss is doing this is because they want to kill whatever they're trying to kill now, the building, and the second it dies, they're going to recall. So when I see this, you know, it's like, okay, well, I no longer have to like micro my units anymore. I just literally keep them on a move and do as much DPS as possible to kill as much as possible, so that he loses as many units as possible before he gets out. Like, I don't want to be running around right now. I need to be killing his army as quick as I can. And we did. I feel like we made him pay for it quite a bit there. He got out with 5 units. It was 2 Archons and 3 Immortals. And he lost quite a bit of supply. Sure, I lost a third. That kind of sucks, but he did lose a lot for that. And now the game turns into something totally different. This is now the macro mode ZvP. So what should be happening right now is, I know he's gone for Charge the Archon Immortal. It's, you know, I just fought against it. Right now, what I should be doing is I should be defending my bases. I should be fixing my economy and defending my bases. And he's even actually just invested a shitload of units here to attack another hatchery. He's really, like, this kind of also tells you the strategy your opponent is going for, basically. He's going for this, like... he's going for this, like, economy starve style, where he's willing to throw away units as long as he keeps me defensive. Because if he throws away units, sure, he's taking inefficient trades in terms of, like, he loses more resources than I do, and whatever just died. But if he limits my amount of resources I can generate, then he generates more because I'm not allowed to attack him. And then he just wins the game because he starves me out. So right now, my goal here should be base defense. Do not let bases die. Keep as many bases alive as I can. And he actually just invested this entire army here, which was like 13 Zealots, 5 Stalkers, an Immortal, and an Archon, to kill very little. He killed a few Zerglings, basically, and almost killed a hatchery. That's huge. This is great for me. But this was kind of a mistake by me, moving out. You can, you know, as a player, you can almost always assume that your opponent, if they ever commit to a building this hard, and they almost kill it, there's a very high chance they're going to come back and try and finish the job with something at some point in the near future. So what I should have done here is I probably should have left my Hydras at home, because thinking about it like this, I have Broodlords, okay? I'm going for Broodlords. I'm even making more Broodlords. If you really break it down and think about it, this was a stupid-ass attack that I did. Why? Moving out with a few Zerglings, a couple Roaches, and some Hydras. This is never going to win the game, and it's very unlikely that it's even going to break my opponent's base in some way. It's like, he's most likely set up to deal with this. This is not a very big army. So this army, if anything moved out, it should have just been the Zerglings, to see if I could maybe kill like some probes or something like that, because that's about what, at best, what I can hope that this army will accomplish. And if I would have left the Hydras here to defend this base, this hatchery would not die. But I moved out in a stupid way, so it does die. See, like, if the Hydras and Roaches were not here, the Lings could have denied this by themselves. So that was definitely a mistake that I just made. Hydras were overkill for that. And now he's over here attacking another base. He's getting really aggressive. And it seems like it's really expensive, right? And he also did just recall recently, so there's a very high chance his recall is still going to be on cooldown, which means that this army could potentially die. And I do have enough Broodlords here back at home. I have 12 Broods currently, or 11. Do I have one in production? No, okay. I just have 11 Broodlords. I have enough Broodlords here to actually kill this entire army. This is not enough to stop my Broodlords. And I launch a counterattack at the same time. I feel like what I did here is I made the best out of a bad choice. These Hydras should be defensive. They should have been defensive to not only save this base, but they would also be assisting the Broodlords in defending this army. And I might have even saved this base as well, possibly. Because the Hydras do add in a lot of DPS, and it could have made his army chase the Hydras a little bit, or whatever. There's a chance that I could have saved this base. Which would have been a better way to go about doing things. But since they were already across the map, I went, fuck it, my Broodlords will stop this army, and let's just use our Hydras to then counterattack with our Lings as well. Which is ideally what they should be doing now, since they're already up here. Because if they were to walk across the map, this fight would already be over by the time the Hydras got back. So I'm kind of just trying to maximize DPS for a previous mistake I made. And our Hydras got overpowered by the Zealots. He kept warping in more. So instead of losing all of them, we just decided to pull the leftovers back before just throwing them away. I did kill quite a few Zealots, but, you know, I feel like he made a okay... I feel like the choice over here to kill this with 2 Oracles was great. But then I kind of think the choice to fight here with his big-ass army that he just lost was a mistake, because he only killed a hatchery that wasn't even mining yet. Really? There's very little drones mining this base. But and I can also just transfer them here now. He lost probably like a 40 supply worth of army to kill 5 Broodlords. Or 6 Broodlords, which is bad trade. That's more resources lost for him. So you can see that, the resources lost up here, he's lost like 5,000 more resources than I have. And I feel like that fight was a big trade there in my favor. We both made a mistake, but I think his was a little bit bigger than mine in that fight right there. And now once again the game goes back to like this weird macro phase where he's been super aggressive, I've been super aggressive, but now there's no guarantee that he's going to remake the exact same army he just threw away. This could be him he could also be doing something like this, okay? If you break it down in your head and you think about it logically, you can go, why did he just attack me with this big ass army here and lose it all? Well, the reason why he lost it all is because his recall was still on cooldown, guaranteed. He just recalled the previous army really early before that, and then he launched another attack right after it. But what if this guy now has Stargates, a lot of Stargates, and now he's switching tech into Tempest, or Carrier, or Void Ray, or something like that. Probably would be most likely Tempest or Carrier. That could also be why he was freeing up a lot of supply to replace it with something else that's going to be better suited to deal with a Broodlord-based army. So I have a bunch of Corruptors right now. We made them just in case, you know, just in case we need more Broodlords right now, I could just morph the Corruptors immediately. And like if I saw him pushing right here with a Changeling, and there's like a big ass army coming out again with like Archon Immortal, I would immediately just be like, all right, let's spend all our resources we currently have and make more Broodlords. But what we're doing is we're back in the scouting phase because we don't know what he's doing exactly yet. So our Changelings are moving out, and we should also probably send like a Zergling if we have one, or something just somewhere. What we want to do is scout every possible expansion and then towards his base to see what kind of an army he has and how many bases he's on. And if he's already going for air, we will need to prioritize Corruptors a bit harder And if he's going for ground, we don't really need corruptors at all. That's basically what I'm going to do here. And that's, you know, that's what we should be scouting for. This changeling should 100% be moving further into his base. And this one got blocked by a stasis trap. So I really need to scout again. I need to send something out to scout. And there's another army coming out, so... Okay, once again, he's actually given me the information I need by being aggressive. So since he's moving out, we morphed in a ton of broods. And once again, we should have enough broods to defend this army. And he killed this base, which we just had saturated, but we just rotated the drones back to this base, which is now also fully saturated. So the name of the game for him is definitely economy denial. He wants to kill all my bases and never let me mine minerals. The beautiful thing about Broodlord is if you just stutter step the Broodlord's back, the Archons always get blocked by changelings, or by Broodlings, and it becomes really hard to break the Broodlords. Like, this army's huge, and look, my Broodlord army is not that big if you compare this amount of supply for this army to how big my Broodlord supply ball was. His army was probably double the size of mine there. Yeah, we still defended it, and we didn't even lose the base that we set up the fight at. It's because Broodlords just perform really well against that kind of an army. But he is, again, he's doing a good job of denying my future expansions. And I know he's on 4 bases because I just scouted this base and I denied it. This base up here was denied earlier. And I know he's still got 4 bases. I still have the changeling running around. But it's 4 base versus 4 base. But he's been mining on his bases longer than I have, because my 4th got denied earlier. So he's been I've never killed one of his actual 4 bases. I've only killed his 5th and his 6th. So he definitely has more money that he's generated over the game over me so far. So he'll probably have a bigger army, even though we've taken better fights. He just has had more money than me all game, by a little bit. But we are getting really close to mining out of our main. We're getting really close to mining of our natural. Like, all of our bases are getting somewhat mined out, except for this. This base is still pretty fresh for a while. But it's kind of putting us on a clock where we really need to expand, or we're going to start running out of money. But you can say the same thing about him. He's been mining on bases just as long, if not longer, than I have. On the main natural 3rd, I've mined longer than him, because I did take my 3rd faster than he did, but he took his 4th and kept that alive longer than I have. So we're both on kind of a clock. They just kind of end at different times. Yeah. But all we really got to do is just, because he's committing so hard into this Stalker, Archon, Zealot, this ground-based army, we just really need to keep the Broodlord count to a healthy number. And right now we have, we currently have 11 again. Like, somewhere between 12 and 16, I would say, is healthy. 11 is a bit on the small side. But here, once again, is we denied the Prism in my main with Hydraling, so we're good on that. And now we have Broodlords at an opposite location, defending against this big ball of units. So this, again, this supply for him is the majority of his entire army. He's got 12 Zealots, 5 Archons, 9 Stalker, 1 Phoenix, 2 blah blah blah. All this should appear. It's pretty much all here right now. So I'm fighting against an army supply for him. That is, it's 83 army supply. And I'm only fighting it with my Broodlords and my Corruptors. And my Broodlords are worth 44 supply, and my Corruptors are worth 12 supply. So he's got just a bigger army here than I do. But I would say I still have the advantage in this fight, just because of the simple way that Broodlords micro, especially if you get Air Carapace and melee upgrades. We already have melee level 3, so my Broodlings actually... Here's the thing about Protoss. A lot of Protosses upgrade armor and shields way after they get weapons. They don't ever go double... Like, it's really rare to see a Protoss go double forge and get multi-upgrade. So it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it is a humongous deal if the Protoss does not have armor and I have level 3 weapon Broodlings. Because it's like putting a bunch of adrenal gland Zerglings in his fucking face. It's not quite as good as an adrenal gland Zergling, but it's comparable. for the damage that they deal. It will just start annihilating units really quickly. If you get like a lot of changelings out, or I keep saying changelings, a lot of broodlings out. And not only that, but the way the targeting or the AI works for a broodlord is really easy. Because if I just say attack on the ground, I go A move and then back up, attack the ground, back up, attack the ground, back up. And I keep kiting that way, I don't even have to focus fire. It will just attack the nearest target to my broodlords. And if it's stalkers that blink underneath my broodlords, I do want to get rid of them as quick as possible. Because not only then will it cause the congestion of broodlings underneath my broodlords so the stalkers can't move around and they'll get surrounded and killed quickly. But it'll also cause congestion as I kite further away from the Archons, so the Archons can't really get on top of the broodlords anyways. But it'll get rid of the stalkers quickly, and as soon as the stalkers are dead, the A move on the ground and kiting away then will target every single Archon. It'll never shoot a Zealot unless there's no Archon in range. And like 11 broodlords on a single shot with no weapon upgrade can actually kill an Archon without a weapon upgrade. Which is why 12 to 16 broodlords is like the sweet spot number. Because it gives you the ability to lose a couple broodlords throughout the fight and still one-shot a fucking Archon every single time you're kiting away from his army. And it's just a lot of damage. Because like, look at these broodlings, man. They attack every 0.46 seconds, which is slightly faster than a Zergling without adrenal glands. And they do 7 damage. Which is slightly less than a Zergling, which does 8 damage. So they hit really fucking hard. It's basically like having non-adrenal lings. Okay, so I said it differently earlier, but really what it's like is it's like you have a bunch of Zerglings that just keep getting spawned in the fight that don't have adrenal glands. It's very comparable to that, because they attack slightly faster but do 1 less damage. But they fucking wreck, dude. Look at them. They're just like picking apart these Templars and shit. Look at them kill like another Templar or Archon. They just killed an Archon. They're not slow either. Like, they're really good. And it's because I have melee upgrades, which is why it's like they're owning so hard. And then now he backs up, and we have a Corruptor, Broodlord, and some ground. Like, very little amounts of ground. At this point, I've kind of committed to investing all of my gas. This is like late game. This is late game Zerg. Broodlords are amazing. And now we're getting to a more healthy number, I would say. We're now about to have 14 Broodlords, which is definitely a way more healthy number than 11. Because it gives me that number, that sweet number to have, where it's like I will one-shot any unit he has on the ground if all my Broodlords attack the same unit. And it's gonna, every Broodlord on top of every Broodlord is just more Broodlings that spawn a traffic jam in the fight. But you don't want to ever go over 16. Anything over 16 is a bit much, because you're really setting yourself up then to fail if your opponent does a transition into like air. You'll never have enough supply to cover your Broodlords then. So 16 is like max, you don't want to go above that. 14 is like perfect, I would say. Because if 12 is minimum and 16 is maximum, anywhere in between that is, you know, like a nice number to have. It's healthy. And we're just, at this point in the game, I don't really have a position to move out. If I move out right now, I really set myself up for potential counterattacks like this, and I could totally die. It's very likely that I could die. So I need to keep being defensive until and basically just play the game as like I'm going to keep increasing a death ball for myself. And the nice thing too about having that kind of a mindset is the bigger the death ball gets for me, it takes time to do that, especially in a game like this where it's constant trades back and forth. But it means more and more of the map will mine out before the real fight actually does start. So it's easier to pick the location I want to fight at, a location that would make sense. But that's all we're doing right now, is we're playing defensive. I know he cannot kill me right now, because our army is better than his if we're playing defensively. But he definitely has the advantage of mobility and multi-prong. I can't stop that if my Broodlords are out of position. So the whole game for us now is just, again, to continuously build up my army more and more. And we really need to keep scouting to see what he's doing. Is he? How many more bases is he taking, and what kind of comp is he gonna go in for? If he keeps attacking me with bigger armies over and over on the ground, it will keep revealing to me that he's gonna keep going for ground. But every time he stops attacking, after a fight happens and he loses a lot of supply, that's when you have to be worried. Like, is he gonna transition or not? And now, we're going for like the middle ground unit. We've started, we have a really healthy Broodlord count, so we're done making Broodlords. But now that means we're gonna have a little bit of resources freed up. And instead of making like now a shitload of Corruptor, because he's sticking on the ground, we're going into Infestors now. If he was already showing me he had like Carriers and Tempest, I would have, instead of going for these Infestors this early, I would have gone for Corruptor. But he's not going air yet, so we're gonna now increase the size of our support units, like our support line basically. So if we make some Infestors, it not only gives me the ability to like fungal growth his army and really zone out his Templar, or punish him if he ever tries to retreat, because I can fungal him as he runs away and let the Broodlords really get some surrounds with Broodlings and kill a lot of units. But it also, just in case he does now go air, these Infestors will still be useful even then. It's just they're not as useful as Corruptor if this guy were to like rush Carriers or something like that with Templar. It's just playing it safe basically. This is a big backbone to the death ball. Look at these Broodlings, man. They just wiped out all the Templar. Beautiful. Or all the back Templar. Now he just killed my spawning pool. And he's still being really annoying at keeping me contained. And now this is when I kind of need to make a choice. This is like an intelligence choice here. Like, it's like a mid-game decision that's going to change the course of the game for you drastically, especially if my army is a slow army. He just attacked this base. He just killed this base. And this base is also almost mined out. It's really low on resources. It has probably only like 20% left of what it originally started with. Or maybe even less. Maybe like 15% left. So do I want to expand here again and mine out a little bit? Or do I want to take somewhere else and focus on a different side of the map? Because if I take this base, this also means that I most likely should either take also this base or I should take this base. But the only problem with this is if I take this base way over here, it really stretches my Broodlords super thin to not only try and defend this base, but I gotta go all the way back and defend this base on the complete other side of the map. And again, he's the one who has the advantage of mobility. So if I were to expand here and take this base, it seems kind of ridiculous because it's gonna be really hard for my Broodlords to defend all my bases at once. Then if I were to take this base and now this base, it seems kind of not like the best idea because this cliff is really annoying for like, if he can walk 2 Templars over here and storm and just kill a whole mineral line and I'll be like, ah, shit. Well, this base is really exposed and really vulnerable to taking damage and I don't really have control of the map right now because he's killed so much of my creep. So realistically, I would say keeping this base alive, which means I can keep my Broodlords around here and I can take this base, which then means I can then move my Broodlords up to like right here. So I can defend this base and this base all together really easily. It seems like the logical scenario to go for. So sometimes this kind of situation happens where you have to really kind of break the game down just for a second and go, what are my advantages and what are my opponent's advantages? And I should play to the advantages that I have. And my advantage is power. My army is stronger than his. His advantage is mobility. His army is faster than mine and can fuck me up if I'm out of position. So playing to my strength was by taking this base. Reduces the amount of time I have to, or the amount of time I spend running around the map to defend things. And now this goes again back into the situation where we should scout the map and see where he's trying to expand and where his bases are. Nice, we just got rid of that. Now we just saw his army down here in bottom left. And notice how I'm not really moving the Broodlords. Because I don't really care if he kills these 2 extractors. I don't give a shit. If he moves over all the way to like right here, then I'll be like, alright, these Broodlords probably need to start heading down into my natural. Because he's like going to commit then to my base. I'm not going to let him kill my whole main in natural. But I don't care if he kills this area. Because the one thing I don't want to happen is I don't want to see some of his army over here, and then for something to happen to where he could like watch me run down the map to like let's say I move my broodlords down to here and be like, oh god, I just saw him over there. If I move my broodlords like over here to protect against the potential attack of this, and then he just walks out of the fog up here and kills this base, I'm just like, well, I just got outpositioned again, and my broodlords will never get back in time from down here all the way back up to my base up here to defend it. So you gotta be really careful with where you position your army at this point in the game. And as soon as we start getting some spines and stuff like that, it's gonna make it way easier to, you know, it'll buy you time to deal with things like a zealot run by. And now he's going air, so now we need to keep some corruptors in my army. This is he's finally transitioned. This is going to be a broodlord killing army basically. But the beautiful thing about it though is he transitioned really late. So his upgrades on his air are 0-1. My upgrades on my air are already 3-0 and we almost have level 1 weapons done. So my air upgrade is way higher than his. And now at this point, we just don't want to take a bad fight. And since I'm kind of situated on the right side of the map, and we have some creep over here defending our base, a perfect way to execute a really good attack right now would be to scout the left side of the map with my ground army and try and do some damage to, like, let's say if there was a base here again, we could just attack him on that side, which might at the same time also pull his army around, pull it away from the other side of the map. But we could also, our army is now pretty scary. We don't need these Zerglings to cover my army. Like, the Zerglings are really irrelevant at this point in terms of army versus army. They're not going to do anything. But this army, I have enough infestors to really zone out his ground really well with fungals. I could neural parasite a lot of air units. If I had neural parasite, it's almost done. It's really close. And then I also have enough broodlords and I have enough corruptors to, I'm about to have, what is this? 17, I'm about to have 17 corruptor to, you know, really jump on top of the carriers and the Tempest. And again, it's a huge deal too, because these corruptors have max armor. And he only has level 1 weapons, so like his carriers are going to do absolutely nothing. His Tempest will do something, but his carriers won't. And there's his army. We see it. And we actually just scouted another base. So we know that he's taking the opposite side of the map. So since he's taking this side of the map, and he's starting to guard it, it would be really good for us to want to kill this side of the map, commit to killing this, because the last thing I want to happen is for him to mine out both sides of the corners of the map. That's going to be really shit for me. If this game doesn't end soon. And look, we actually caught him with a fungal there, so now we made him recall. If he didn't recall, we would have killed a lot of units and punished him for that, but since he did recall, that opens up a window now for me to kill this base. And this creep down here is really important, because it shows me if he launches a counterattack, which he's actually doing right now. He's going for a counter. So we did just enough damage for this Nexus to die. We just launched a bunch of broodlings at it, and now before it's even dead, we're not going to stay here and kill the gases and shit. We're just going to go home right now. Because I don't know if this is going to be the whole army. If it's like a mothership is going to come out with like carriers and Tempest as well out of the fog in a second. And if you just blink these stalkers forward to get over here quick. Or if it's just stalkers. I don't know for sure. But we need to take that shit seriously. Because if he wants to commit all the way to my natural, that's going to be a problem. And he's committing all the way to my natural. But also, we see it's no air units supporting it, so I can actually engage this army before my broodlords get here, because they're not going to be here for a while. Like, they're going to be here in about 10 seconds. And I'm going to pause it one more time. Just because this kind of shit's important. It really opens your mind as to, like, why things work. The reason why we're going to win this fight is because this guy still does not have maxed armor upgrades. He only has level 1 armor on, he only has level 1 shields and level 2 armor. And my Lings have still had level 3 melee for the longest time now. It's been like 12 minutes that they've had level 3 melee. And they've had adrenal glands as well the whole game. And having adrenal glands is, in itself, is like a humongous upgrade that makes Lings kind of kick the shit out of Stalkers. But the fact that he still doesn't have max armor upgrades and we have max weapon upgrades is a huge deal. Because when it comes to like Stalkers versus Lings, Ling armor is not a big deal, and Stalker weapons are not a big deal. The way the units work, because a Stalker is a projectile unit, which a lot of times what will happen is you'll be blinking the Stalkers around and you'll just be shooting the outside of the Lings. Like you'll be shooting the front line of Lings, you'll blink away, you'll shoot the front line of Lings, you'll try to keep kiting. And what that does is it gives Stalkers a lot of overkill, because like 8 Stalkers might shoot the same Zergling when it only would have taken 4 Stalkers to kill it. It happens a lot. It's because it's a projectile based unit. A Zergling is a insta damage unit. It's a melee unit, so it doesn't waste damage at all. And on top of that, we have Infestors here, so we can continuously get full surrounds on these units. So his Stalkers will fucking just melt super fast. Even if they had maxed armor, they would still melt in this situation because the Infestors are here. And now there's this air army. But his air army is not being supported by any ground other than like an Archon. Our Broodlords are zoning out the Archon while we're just punishing the air. And I just want you guys to check this out. Look at this shit. Is this Scriptor the one getting hit by the carrier? Okay, I'll just click it. I'll break it down for you guys. So a carrier does 7 damage, okay? Just listen to this shit really fast. Okay, this is why it's huge if a Protoss transitions to air late and you already have good upgrades. And Carapace is always the priority with your upgrades against Protoss. Carapace is way more important than weapons. If you plan on taking the game to a point like this, where it's going to be like Corruptor Broodlord as your in-game army. And here's why. A carrier does 7 damage. A Corruptor has 5 Carapace. And a carrier has 2 weapons, and it has 8 different attacks because each carrier itself holds 8 interceptors, okay? So if you break the math down on a weapon, the damage a carrier can do, it does 7 damage times 2 attacks times 8, which is 14 times 8, which is 108, or 130, or 100, no it's not, sorry. It's 112. It's 112. I did it wrong for a second there, but it's 112 damage. But what happens is, every time one weapon upgrade happens for the Protoss, it actually gives the carrier, each carrier, 16 damage upgrades. Because it upgrades each interceptor twice, and it has 8 interceptors. So it gets 16 damage throughout the whole carrier. Which, in turn, means every Carapace upgrade reduces the carrier's damage by 16. Because it reduces 1 damage off of every single interceptor shot. So a carrier, instead of doing 112 damage, it actually only does... if you take 5 off the initial damage, now it does 2. It does 2 times 2 times 8. So it does 4 times 8. Which is 32, boys. Okay, instead of a carrier doing 112 damage, it does 32. So it's doing a very little amount of damage in the same amount of time. Which is why this fight looks like this. Where the Corruptors just keep going forward and none of them really die. They're all just like tanking the damage. Now this is an interesting moment in the game where I don't want to lose my economy. I got to be careful about it. And I don't want to lose my army. It's kind of late for me to turn my army around and just go back home and defend, because it would take my Broodlords forever to get back. And if I was relying on that purely, my whole base would be dead. So instead we just rely on Zerglings. And, you know, just try to rely on Zerglings. And now we're actually, this is actually something I forgot I did, but it was smart. We actually just made 16 mutas. Because I already have enough Corruptor Broodlord to pressure his army as it stands right now. Like, I just won the fight. I just killed a lot of units. I didn't kill his entire army, but I did kill quite a bit. And now, the one big vulnerability to my game here, at this point, is if this guy just tries to avoid fighting me for a while, and at the same time just kills my entire economy because my Broodlords are out of position. Because he still has more than me at the moment. Well, if I just make Muta and he just makes a shitload of Zealots over and over attack my base, well, the Mutas will just kill the Zealots for free all day. Because Mutas are flying and Zealots can't hit air. So, I feel like the Mutas were a really good decision here to stop that kind of a situation. Now we can just up-row the drones and continue mining. There you go, we're engaging with the Broodlords, getting rid of some of the Archons. Also, not only getting rid of the Archons, we're zoning out the Archons. He does have a lot of Archons. But we're also trying to get rid of the air now. And this is quite a bit of air. This is actually a lot of Void Rays. And I gotta be careful. If you engage Void Rays with this kind of an army, you will get your army will melt pretty fast because these units do an insane amount of damage to armored really fast with the prismatic beam on. So you gotta be careful about that shit. So we kind of pull back a little bit, and now we're killing some carrier. We should really be pulling back the Broodlords. Having the Broodlords stay in here and fight is a little scary. We made Infestitarians, but at the same time, I just lost all of my Corruptor. I feel like that was a mistake by me. Like, that was a bit of an impatient attack right there. But luckily, I still have Mutas, so I can actually use the Mutas to help. But just imagine this. If I moved the Broodlords back just a tad, and then I made the same Infestitarians that I did to make him, like, you know, kind of want to, like, consider attacking me or maybe retreat. But if I would have had, like, still, like, the 8 Corruptors I just had a second ago, because I just fought the Void Rays up here with the Prismatic Beam on, if I would have waited and still had, like, 8 Corruptors now, I would then have, like, 16 Muta and 8 Corruptor at this point, which would be huge. But I kind of did it impatiently. I attacked because I really wanted to kill the Nexus. And what was the point of killing this Nexus this early? Like, right now... sorry, right... Right now is when I should be backing the Broodlords up. Just for a second. Just so that the Mutas can get over here. And in this time frame, the Broodlords killed... Like, right there, right now, I should be backing up. And right now, the only thing that's still here is 2 Archons. Because one of them just died. And it would allow me to get these Corruptors out of here without losing them. Like that. So again, that was a little bit of a mistake. It was not worth it. Because I keep coming back into the fight right now while these Mutas swoop in and help. And then now the beam is off on the Void Rays. It's on cooldown. But we did just kind of ruin his economy. This game's getting really scrappy. We're just having our Mutas and our Infestor kind of cover my Broodlord. And we're just doing damage wherever we can. And Adrenal Lings with good upgrades versus probes is never a good fight for probes. But now this game becomes a situation of... We're both broke now. We both have really bad economies. If you look at the worker count, he's got 16 probes. I have 24 drones. And my 24 drones are currently long distance mining this base. Realistically, I'm not... Taking this fight is probably not going to be the smartest idea. Because this guy now also has Phoenix, and I don't know if he's going to just have one or if there's going to be multiple. And he has a decent amount of Void Ray. So this base is most likely going to die. But I also am scouting over here. I know that this is his only base currently. Because I just scouted the entire map a second ago with my entire army. I just killed the entire left side. And I scouted across the middle. So this is a brand new base that I haven't seen yet. And I know that these probes are here. So it just kind of comes down to how can I cost efficiently kill everything he has now without putting my army at risk. And I feel like one of the best answers to that, there would be 2 answers. One would be Hydra. And the next would be Infestor, I would say. But the only problem about Hydra is you definitely need more than equal numbers. You cannot beat Void Rays with equal numbers of Hydras. Be like, oh, 10 Void Rays and 10 Hydras. 10 Void Rays, if they focus fire, will kick the shit out of 10 Hydras. Also, I don't have range upgrades that high, so Hydras are kind of like, I don't know. He's actually getting to a point where he also has he's getting really good upgrades on his air now. He has maxed out weapons, and I'd be fighting him with 1-1 Hydras, because I only have level 1 Carapace and level 1 weapons currently. So Hydras are kind of probably not going to be the best choice, because I also don't even have a big economy to make a lot of them. So this leaves Infestors, I would say. Infestors would be an amazing idea, because I already have a lot of Broodlords. It can combine into a lot of things that can happen here. Like, you know, if he were to not just go air, if he were to go ground, it would be great as well. Because I could fungal the ground. And if he goes for air like this, the thing that's beautiful about Infestors is if he goes for air, like a lot of Void Rays, if I make Infestors, which are cheaper, by the way, than every unit besides the Phoenix, but he's not really going Mass Phoenix. He's going Void Ray. An Infestor is cheaper than a Void Ray, and an Infestor can completely counter a Void Ray because of Neural Parasite. You can just take his own Void Rays away from him, and if there's one thing a Void Ray kills really fast, it's another Void Ray. And I know what kind of army he has because he's flying over creep. So it's not like I'm confused. I know what I'm fighting against. It's a lot of Void Rays. So yeah, Infestors would be great here. And I wouldn't say Viper would be that great, because if this guy splits his army up, like, I don't have a lot of money, and if I spend all my gas on Parasitic Bomb, if this guy just spreads his army out, Parasitic Bomb is going to own 1 Void Ray. Just so you guys know, a Parasitic Bomb does 120 damage, and a Void Ray has 250 health. So if a Void Ray eats a full Parasitic Bomb, it'll still have like 60% or like 55% of its total health pool. And if he spreads his Void Rays out as like just before the bombs come, the only one Void Ray is going to take a little bit of damage, and the rest are going to be like, let's kill everything here. Vipers are not cheap. A Viper is actually more expensive than an Infestor. And I would honestly rather have a Neural Parasite than a Parasitic Bomb in this situation. Because if you look at it as well, well, right now what we're trying to do, we're not trying to really fungal to kill him. We're just trying to get him the fuck off my base. And he doesn't want to leave. He's actually just continuously eating fungals. So since he didn't want to leave, we just decided to take the fight because we're fungling him down and killing his army. And sure, I just lost my mutas to do that. But if I didn't do anything, he would have killed my only economy. This is my only base. So I kind of have to defend this. I was hoping he was just going to back up to a fungal. Ideally, that's what I would have liked, because I don't have enough Infestors right now to Neural Parasite. If I would have... There was like 8 Void Rays there and a Phoenix. And if I would have cast 4 Neural Parasites and he would have just moved the Void Rays forward just a little bit and target fired my Infestors, the speed at which a Void Ray with full upgrades and Prismatic Alignment can kill an Infestor is like he could just go and all 4 Infestors are dead. That's how fast they would all die. 4 little... Oh, they're all dead. And now 8 Void Rays are back out, and now a lot of the Void Rays are still full health because they were neuraled and taking no damage. And I probably would have lost the game if I would have rushed Neural Parasite there. So yeah, I just used Fungal instead. It seemed like a better choice. But my mutas died for it. But he also did... It's not like I lost mutas for nothing. He also lost a lot of Void Ray. He lost like 7 Void Ray there. Almost like the final one as well. So it kind of just reset our shit. I didn't lose any of my Broodlords, so I'm still totally fine to ground. But I need to keep reinforcing the anti-air. And the beautiful thing too is since I used Fungal Growth, I didn't lose any Infestors. Like, I didn't put my Infestors in a compromising position because they fungled and they backed up. Fungal, back up. Fungal, back up. So they're just going to rebuild energy, which is great. And now he's back again. Now he's retaken another base. We've retaken another base, but we don't have probes at it yet, or drones at it. We actually caught the Templar there. That was really nice. We caught a Templar, and he decided to make an Archon, because he was going to die. And the Archon's guaranteed going to die. so that was pretty good for us. So like he dodged the Broodlord shot there with the Archon Morph. Yeah, that was really nice pick off. If we're both really broke like this, that was huge. I just got rid of storms right there, like potential 4 storms, if they had full energy. And now, he again is, whenever he flies around my army or kills my creep, I know what he's doing. And now that he started going back into Phoenix a little bit, he has more than 1 Phoenix now. Now he has 3. And there's a chance, I don't know for sure, but there's a chance he might start going into a lot of Phoenix. Like he might do something, such as make charge lots and Phoenix, and then just lift off my my infestors or something like that, and focus down my ground army, whatever I have left, with his zealots, like my infestors or some shit. Or he might just fly around with a bunch of Phoenix and just kill my air army. Like Phoenix can become a little bit more annoying if or he, like, let's say he just has a warp prism fly over and he feedbacks all of my infestors, and I don't catch it or something like that. And then now the Broodlords are completely exposed to Phoenix is just getting all over them, and he has too many Phoenix for me to deal with. That could be a problem. Things like that could be a problem. So since he's going back into Phoenix, I start going into Corruptors a little bit again. I start reinforcing my Corruptor count a little bit. Because if I have like 8 Corruptor or 10 Corruptor, even if he has like 16 Phoenix, I'll be totally fine. And now I'm feeling pretty confident that we'll be okay if he fights me, because I have enough Corruptors to really combat what he has, and I have also quite a bit of Infestor. And we actually just got a Void Ray there for free a second ago. But if he commits to this fight, we will be using... You can also see earlier, I also picked off his observers, and that was another reason that kind of like instigated the attack for me. If he loses all forms of detection, there's nothing he can do about Burrowed Infestors neural parasiting his army. And if we look at what he has here, he has no Oracle and he has no Observer. So he actually can't see my Infestors. And now we just neural parasite as many Void Rays as we can. And look how fast his own Void Rays kill his own Void Rays. And we just back up with the Corruptor. Like, they just own each other. Meanwhile, our Corruptors are killing the Phoenix over here. And now we've killed this base. And this game at this point now is pretty over. We're just going to remake more Corruptor because we still haven't lost our Infestors. We still haven't lost our Broodlords. So we're totally fine versus the ground. The only thing I should be worried about is just in case he makes more air once again. So I can not send this army out to die. Because if I actually somehow encounter like 5 Void Rays again with this army without any coverage, it'll all die. But the game is kind of coming to an end here because we're controlling his economy pretty well. Like, we're counterattacking him with Lings over here. We're fighting his army once again. And he's kind of starving out now. And that's it, man. And the music starts now. And yeah, it kind of just like, this game was like build orders and, you know, decision making early with how we're going to do things and scouting and all that stuff. But at the end of the game, it really kind of just came down to decision making with positioning and mobility of my army. And my army is very immobile, so it was really crucial as to every time, whenever something happened, where I would dictate where the fights happened with my army. That was probably the key to winning this game, I would say, after like, ever since like the 18-minute mark to the end of the game. But yeah, there's a lot of things to... There was a lot of things to have gone over in that game, and I hope some people out there saw it and went, "Oh yeah, okay, cool. That's interesting. I learned some stuff." If you learned anything, good shit. Just know that if you do go gasless like I do in the beginning of the game, I'll give you guys a quick little tip here, even though we didn't see this. But if you go gasless in the beginning of the game, 3-base gasless opener, when you take the gas is very important. And here's the easiest way to tell how to do it, okay? There's a little bit of deviations to it, but here's how to tell how to take your gas, or when to take your gas. If you play against someone who goes for a Stargate really early, taking your gas around 3 minutes and 40 seconds is great, because it allows you to have a really, really strong economy. If you play against anything that is not a Stargate, if you play against someone who rushes the Twilight Council, or someone who rushes a Robo, I would highly recommend you take your gas around 2 minutes 50 seconds to 3 minutes. Because if you don't take your gas early, you are very susceptible to being killed by charge lot all-ins, warp prism pressures, and like with DTs into Archons, and like any really other type of all-in, like a Blink Stalker all-in with shield batteries, Adept all-ins over all of your economy. There's a lot of different types of all-ins Protosses can do. And yeah, if you don't take your gas early, 2 minutes 50 to 3 minutes, that's early. If you don't take your gases around then, you will not be prepared by the time they show up at your base, if you do this kind of a build. And then the whole 5-minute thing, go back and listen to the 5-minute discussion we had earlier about the third with Protoss and if they're going to all-in you or not. If you skip to the end, just go back to when it was like 5 minutes in the game clock, and I talk all about it for like 2 minutes. It's important. Those are probably the most important things about this build in the early game that will set you up to not die and take you to the late game, man, if you don't kill your opponent before that. And I know that kind of does it, man. Guys, thank you for watching. Shout out to Ling Bane B for the donation and the request of the analysis here. Thank you, dude. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, check out some of my other videos, man. If you guys like this one and you want more like it, I post a lot of these, a couple every week. So there's a lot more to be seen if you liked it. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good one, everyone. See you later. Goodbye. Okay, I don't know. I didn't know really well. I honestly didn't know where I was going with that outro. I was like, I'll just say some shit.